Okay, so we're recording now, and we're doing a brief InDesign demo here. So this is the screen that you see when you start a new InDesign project or InDesign file. And there's a couple things to go over here. So on the right here, we have our basic presets right here. So right now, our units are in picas, and picas are essentially pixels. So it's up to you, Felix, for example, or really anyone, to decide what unit of measurement you want to use. So if you're more familiar with millimeters, Felix, and you feel more comfortable with millimeters or centimeters, that's more than okay. But I'm familiar with inches, so I'm going to change it to inches here. And then over here, you'll see that the units of measurements have all updated. So right now, I am working with 8.5 inches by 11 inches. So that's your regular, in the United States, that's your normal printer paper size. So for example, we're working on creating large format boards for architectural presentation. So for this class, as you know, the final deliverable or the final presentation, what's going on here? It's frozen. Okay, there we go. The final presentation is going to be 24 inches by 24 inches, otherwise known as 2 feet by 2 feet. Okay, so over here we have orientation, we have portrait or landscape, and then we have facing pages. And facing pages, if you have this selected, means when you create more and more pages in InDesign, it'll start looking like a board layout. So, or sorry, a booklet. And I'll show you what that means when I open InDesign. And then over here we have margins, so you can set what your margins are. And then we have bleed, and etc. I don't really touch those. I usually just mess around with margins and the height and width. So I'm just gonna go ahead and hit create. And when I do that, you'll see here we have our 24-inch by 24-inch board. So this piece of paper right now is the size of the final board that you will be plotting for this project. Okay, so let's go through some key things with InDesign. So on the right here, we have our properties tab. And this is essentially what we saw when we were creating the InDesign document file. So when we click open or when we click new, these are basically the same options. So if you didn't get it right when you initially created the file, you can go ahead and change it here. If I go over to pages, the pages tab, these are the pages that you have within the InDesign document. So if I go to this button down here, it says create new page, I can create several new pages. So for example, if I were if I were creating a booklet or a portfolio, I would just need to continue creating new pages here. I'm going to go back to properties for a moment. And let's say you are not creating a book, but you're just creating a normal presentation. If you're creating a presentation, it's most likely that you don't want to have these pages facing each other or these back-to-back like book style format. To remove that, I just need to unselect facing pages right here. So when I unclick that, that organizes everything by page. So each individual page or each individual slide. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to pages now. So these are all of our pages, and you can skip to any page here by double clicking. So if, for example, I need to go to page 5, I can double click on page 5, and it will take me directly to that page. Other functions, zooming in and out is just like any other InDesign or Adobe product. You just hold Alt and scroll in and out. Up here, we have what's called parent pages. And what those are is if you select on one of these parent pages, you can, basically this is like creating a template. So for example, if you need to have your name, for example, that needs to happen on every single page of a document, you can, whatever you do here on this page, for example, if I just type my name, and let me make that bigger. Let's see, view. All right, let's make that much larger. All right, so we have my name here. So you'll see that if I put that at the bottom corner, if I decide to leave this parent page and I go back to my main pages, you'll now see that my name is located on the same spot on each sheet. So I don't need to go through and write it over and over on each page. Okay, so those are introduction to pages. The important thing to learn is how to place images into InDesign. So to place any plan, rendering, whatever you're working on into InDesign, what you need to do is you need to go to File, and you need to go to Place. And when you click Place, it's going to ask you for it's going to ask you for the file that you want to place into the project. So one thing that's nice about InDesign is that because it's an Adobe product, you can directly link any Illustrator or Photoshop file directly to InDesign. So I'm just going to select this Farnsworth exterior rendering that I was working on. And now you see that there's a thumbnail that pops up. If I am trying to place an image or a drawing to scale, and I made sure that when I exported it, my drawing is to scale, all I need to do is just click. And that image will be placed into InDesign at the scale you created. Does that make sense? Okay, so alternatively, if I do that again, I can also place it by clicking and dragging. And by doing that, I'm basically defining the scale of the image. So that is how you place an image into InDesign. You can crop images by just clicking on the image itself and playing around with each of these control points. So you can crop it that way. You'll notice that when I hover over it, there's also this circle that appears. When I click the circle, you see what pops up is this orange box. And this orange box is representing the actual bounds of the image itself. So it shows the bounds of the image regardless of whether or not the image has been cropped or not. You'll see also that when I move an image, when I have the orange selected, that I'm moving it around, but the frame that I've edited around it does not move with it. So just be aware of that when you're moving images around in InDesign. You want to make sure that if you're trying to physically move the image around the page, make sure that it's selected with the blue. So don't select by selecting the circle. Just select by selecting the image. So let's talk about links. Over here, we have this icon that's called links. So in InDesign, any file that you place into the document is directly linked to where that file is located onto your computer. So right now, for example, if I decided to relocate where this file is located on my computer, let's see here. Hold on a moment. Okay, let's go back to my screen share. All right, so right now, the file that I've placed is located in this folder, and it's called Farnsworth Exterior Rendering. If I change the location of this file on my computer, InDesign will no longer know where that file is located. So when I move this file in what's going to happen in InDesign is that this image over here is no longer going to be very high quality like I want it to. So let's see what happens if I move this. I'm going to, let's cut this, and I'm going to relocate it just to this folder right here. And so you'll see in InDesign, what happened was that this little
Question mark.
little stop sign, right? And that's telling me that the link has been broken. So that the file and its location on my computer and how it's communicating with InDesign, that link has been broken. So to fix it, all I need to do is double click on that little stop sign, and I need to relocate that file. So I'll just go back here and relink it. Hit open. It relinks, and now it's happy. Another thing that will happen is, for example, if I opened up this file in Photoshop, let's open that file. So while we're waiting for that to open, basically, because everything is linked, if you save over a file and update it, like let's say, for example, I created this rendering, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add people to it. And if I resave that file, InDesign is going to know that that file was saved again and that it will need to update. So, let's see. Will in Photoshop open? Okay, can you see Photoshop, everyone?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So I'm not gonna do anything crazy. I'm just gonna move the location of this cactus image. So I'm gonna put it over here, just so it's very obvious. And I'm just gonna go ahead and hit save. And just wait for it to save. So now if I go back to Illustrator, or sorry, not Illustrator, InDesign, this time there is a warning symbol that comes up, this little triangle. And what that's telling me is it's saying, hey, something in this file has changed and it needs to be updated. So all I need to do is just double click on that icon, and you'll see here that now the image has updated to the changes that I've made in Photoshop. Any questions so far? Okay. Just gonna delete a bunch of these. Uh-oh, didn't mean to delete that. Okay, so let's try to make a board. So one thing, if you need to scale up a drawing, a nice shortcut to both scale the blue and the orange at the same time is if you hold, I think it's Control. Yeah, if you hold Control and Shift, and then you select one of the corners of the images, that allows you to scale the image and the image boundary both at the same time. So you don't have to do each individually. You can do them both together. So option 1, if you just hold Shift, you'd have to do the blue square, and then you'd have to do the same with the orange square. Or you can do both at the same time by holding Control Shift. Okay. Let's talk about rulers. So we have our rulers up here. And something that's really helpful is you can drag from the rulers and drag any line at any location. And this becomes helpful for when you're trying to sort of map out your board layout. So for example, this line might represent where my title goes. So I can go to the text tool here to put in text. And I can type in, let's make this very big. We'll call it title. And then we can also designate space for the project description. So we could say, okay, I want this box right here to be the extent that my description fits into. So we could create another text box, and you can type, so you can just write gibberish. Or if you need to create, if you haven't written your description yet and you just need to create placeholder text, what you can do is you can right-click in your text box, and you can go here, and this menu will pop up, and you can select Fill with Placeholder Text. And that fills the text box with a bunch of nonsense words. but this is called lorem ipsum. And it's basically, it's, like I said, it's gibberish. It doesn't mean anything. But it's meant to look like words in English.
Sorry, can you come back to that title? I'm trying to.
How to create the placeholder text?
Yes.
Sure. So I'm going to delete this and just do it again. So I'm going to use the text tool right here. And I'm just going to create the bounds of my text by just dragging. And if I right click when this little cursor is showing, and I go to fill with placeholder text, that fills that portion of space with text. It doesn't mean anything. It's just meant to, represent where your text will go and how it looks on the page. Okay. Other things to know about InDesign. So I'm gonna go ahead and place another image. So I'll go to File, Place, and let's go to Mini Project. I'm going to insert this photo, and let's just do that. And let me bring it down here, and I'm going to place another photo. Okay, so I'm about to go and place this this next image, but there's a couple things I want you guys to observe. And one of those is when I move this image around, you'll notice that the arrow, this little black arrow in the top left corner of the green image, is highlighted black, and then when I move it here, it moves to white. What that's telling me is that when the arrow turns white, it's telling me that the top of this image is actually perfectly aligned with the top of this image over here. So when it's white, I can go ahead and click, and I can start dragging. And the other helpful thing about InDesign is that you'll notice that as I'm dragging, there's these guidelines that pop up. So there's a green guideline that as I'm dragging down, there's a green line that, okay, it's telling me right now at this location, I've dragged it to the midpoint of the image next to it. If I keep scaling that up, at a certain point, it tells me when the image I'm putting in now has the same dimensions as the image next to it. So it's really helpful because it allows me to make sure that each of my images are perfectly aligned. So it helps you create a really nice organized layout. So I can put those in here. So for example, maybe this is my string of diagrams that happens up here. Any questions so far? Okay. So that's mostly everything to share at the moment. The last thing I'll talk about very briefly is some effects that you might want to play with. You can play around with feathering your images. So for example, if I go and select this image and I right click it, I can go to effects right here, and I can play with, for example, a basic feather. And basic feather will bring up this dialog box here, and it's going to ask me for a feather width. So if I say, for example, 1 inch, and I say diffuse corner, if I hit OK, what that does is it feathers the boundary of my image. So it's no longer a harsh edge. It becomes
Sorry, can you come again?
Yes, sure. So to do that again, what you need to do is you need to right-click the image you have selected, and then you can go to Effects. And the one I just used was called Basic Feather. So you just need to tell the program how much you want to feather it. So let's do 2 inches this time. And I'll hit OK. And that provides a feather all around the image.
What about, sorry, can I ask a question, please?
Yes.
Yes. Now, what about if you want to have a background and is it possible on the InDesign to have a background? Like if this box, this first box under the text, you want to have like a background, giving it a kind of background. Is it possible?
Oh yeah, of course. So for example, like you can put in any image that is your background. So for example, let's say, okay, maybe my rendering is actually located at the top of the board and not the bottom. You can overlay the text. Right now, the text is currently on top of it. But for example, if it wasn't, let's see. So right now, what I've done is I've moved this image to be on top of everything. So right now it's actually cutting off my text. So if I wanted to bring the text to the very top, I would need to select the text. And I would need to right click, and I would go to Arrange and hit Bring to Front. And that will bring my my text over here to be on top of my image. So you can have whatever background. It could be a solid color. It could be an image that you bring into InDesign. It could be anything. You just need to play with what the arrangement of the images are on the page. So again, that's if you select the image, you right click and you hit Arrange. You either need to select Bring to Front or Send to Back. It depends on the arrangement and what you select.
But we can play along with like a solid color here, like the way we do in Photoshop that will fill the box. Is it possible?
To fill the box, yeah.
Yes, like where you have the
So
text, somebody want to paint it like just right, Is it possible here in InDesign?
yes, of course. So if I select the text, just like in InDesign, or sorry, in Illustrator, there's these fill options. So I can actually give the text, for example, if I select that, I can select any color here. And let's say, I don't know, let's get crazy. We'll do a salmon color. We'll hit OK. That will give the text whatever color background you choose. Alternatively, you could also just draw a box and give that box a color. And that would work also. You would just need to play around with the arrangement of the different objects. I think that's everything I have to share right now. Unless Felix, if you have any more questions, I'm happy to show you whatever questions you have.
I think I'm okay for now.
Okay. So I'm just going to stop